Okay, so now we're going to talk about Chapter 27, translational research and generating evidence for practice. Okay, so let's start with an example. So Mr. James is an 87-year-old man with osteoarthritis in the knee. He's frail, he's thin, he needs help getting out of bed, and there's a new registered nurse named Mary, and she's making her rounds with the team and the nursing aide, and she realizes that Mr. James is at risk for skin breakdown and falls. So she looks through the agency policy regarding pressure ulcer prevention and fall prevention. But what other resources could Mary consult if she wanted more information on preventing these issues? If Mary wanted to know what the current research suggests about preventing each of these conditions, how would she obtain this information? So this chapter is going to talk about the concept of translational research and its role in evidence-based practice, with a specific emphasis on nursing informatics. So how do we get translational research, evidence-based practice into clinical practice daily? And how do we use nursing informatics with this? So before pursuing the content in this chapter, you should already understand nursing research, knowledge model, knowledge generation through nursing research. And so the objectives are to clarify the difference between evidence-based practice and translational research, explore models for introducing research findings into practice, and then assess barriers to research utilization in practice. So part of this will encompass some stuff that you will or would have learned in research and QI. So really quick, I want to clarify some terms. So evidence-based practice, translational research, and research utilization are all terms that have been used to describe application of evidential knowledge in practice. And these terms are related. They actually have quite a bit of different meaning. So evidence-based practice, the goal is to decrease practice variability, increase patient safety, and eliminate unnecessary cost. So it's the conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of current best evidence in making decisions about the care of the individual. So best evidence in this context refers to more than just research. It should be combined with other knowledge sources that involve the synthesis of knowledge. So evidence-based will start with a clinical question to resolve a clinical problem. So for example, there's been published research studies used in healthcare quality initiatives as evidence behind the development of practice algorithms that we designed to decrease variability, increase practice safety, improve patient outcomes, and eliminate unnecessary cost. And that's what evidence-based practice is. So we follow these algorithms so that we can keep people safe and decrease cost. And it promotes the use of clinical judgment and knowledge in relation to patients' situation and preference, with procedures and protocols linked in scientific evidence rather than based on customary practice, right? Like those sacred cows. But again, you know that not everything is going to follow a T, but it helps. So research utilization is the use of findings from one or more research studies in a practical application that's unrelated to the original study. So it results in generation of new knowledge. Stetler, who's a big author of different evidence-based practice research articles and models, defines research utilization as the process of transforming research knowledge into actual practice. So translational research is used to describe the translation of medical, biomedical, informatic, and nursing research into actual bedside clinical intervention. So it might not yet be evidence-based practice, but it's translating research to make it evidence-based practice. And research results are crucial to furthering evidence-based practice. So research utilization can be self-limiting if research is inconsistent or not enough research is available. And so that might link you to get more research or to find different areas to tackle or a different approach. So translational research, we talked about that. So there's two ways we use it. One is the transfer of clinical research for its first testing on humans, or transfer of clinical research that we know is safe to an everyday clinical practice setting. So difficulties translating research from T1 to T2 setting exists when research applications really don't fit well within the clinical context, or its practical considerations constrain the application. So for example, utilizing RNs in the primary care setting to do more teaching when your primary care setting uses MAs. So yes, MAs can teach to a point, but not as much as the RN can. So, like that model might not work. Additionally, complicating translational research are the follow-up, you have to analyze, practice, and policy change that occur when adopting research. So it might not be fully incorporated into daily care. So organizational culture influences the changes made to clinical application and will establish groundwork and support for change making. The study of ways to promote the adoption of evidence is called translation science, and that's what your DMP is going to be about. And research results are crucial to furthering evidence-based practice, so you want to make sure you do it correctly. So translational bioinformatics is the development of storage, analytic, and interpretive methods to optimize transformation of all the data that we have out there. So it integrates biological and clinical data and the evolution of clinical informatics methodology in observations. So the history of evidence-based practice. So research results are crucial to furthering evidence-based practice. The concept of using randomized controlled trials and systematic reviews as the gold standard against which one should evaluate the validity and effectiveness of clinical information was actually started in 1972 by Archie Cochrane. So now you guys know about the Cochrane database. And he was a prisoner of war, and he was a medical officer in World War II, and alleged his belief that not all medical interventions were needed, and some caused more harm than good. So he started looking at randomized controlled trials as means of validating clinical intervention and creating these large databases for areas within and collecting all the trials that pertain to it. So now you have the Cochrane Library and Cochrane Collection Database, and that's very accurate evidence. So what is evidence? Okay, so evidence includes standards of practice, codes of ethics, philosophy in nursing and medicine, autobiographic stories, aesthetic criticism, works of art, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? We draw on evidence so that we can audit and we can audit performance data. It creates the culture of an organization. We use it to network, discuss with stakeholders. So randomized controlled trial is considered the most reliable source of evidence. When you rate evidence, randomized controlled trial is the best. And yet they're not always possible, right? And so you have to be critical with what other things you get. Stetler model is really great on evidential hierarchy, and that's something I would always tell people to do. So a meta-analysis has really high level. There's individual experimental studies, quasi-experimental studies, and as you go down, there's less and less rating to the research. There's concern that nursing theorists that nurses are being influenced too much by medical model and accepting that randomized controlled trials are the only true source of evidence. Instead of using theory-guided evidence, it leads you to the medical perspective. The context change from medicine to nursing requires nurses to apply other knowledge and nursing theory. So that's really important to understand. So bridging the gap between, we talk about the weight of evidence, sorry. So bridging the gap, the time between research dissemination and clinical translation may be significant, and this delay may adversely affect patient outcomes and bridging the gap between research and practice. And it requires an understanding of key concepts and barriers, accessing research findings and clinical mentors. You need help to understand research, reinforcing a culture of research and a desire to be part of it. So there's something called the Iowa model, which I love. Research and other evidential sources are adopted directly into practice setting with the goal of developing standard care. And groundwork required to create a conceptual framework is supportive of evidence-based practice.